Hello and welcome to our program. It's called Weekly Discussions Across Three Continents. This project has been sponsored by Asia Europe Foundation Mobility First Grant, and the three participants in this project are Karachi Biennale Trust, there is Pixelache, and there is Connect Private Limited from Australia. Pixelache is in Helsinki and they are having their festival right as we speak, and this podcast will be broadcast during one of their radio shows. So I'm actually very happy to be here today for this discussion. As I mentioned, this discussion is about creativity and well being amongst young people and older creatives. So, what we are aiming to do in this series is get together a group of young people as mentees and some older arts practitioners and get them to engage in conversations with each other regarding different aspects of creativity and well being. This could include difficulties and challenges they are facing, it could include putting on an event, it could include improvising and uh, composing or creating work. So we hope that the discussions between the two, the mentor and the mentee, will give insight into what is involved when you're beginning in this field and how you mature as you go on and you start producing work and managing the field. So I'm very happy today to have with me today Channan Hanif. I'd like to give a small description of Channan's bio. Uh, Channan Hanif is a 23-year-old music producer and a songwriter. He's based in Karachi, Pakistan. He graduated from NYU in 2020 with a BA in politics. During his freshman year, he started writing songs and he has been working on music across music genres. Channan is also fond of acting and he's currently auditioning for roles and in theatre, television, and film. So, hi Channan, it's good to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I think the work you guys are doing is much needed and underrated. It's often just not seen as very important, but I think these are the kind of things that really add meaning to people's lives and can help people figure out what their calling may be when they have not much clarity otherwise. And I think that's the case with a lot of us younger people these days as well. I think a lot of us are lost, and things like this where we can learn from the older generation, see what they've been through, how it relates to our experiences, and make it more of a dialogue and less of you guys don't know what we're like and we don't know what you're like. So I think that it's great, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Channan. So, I also wanted to mention that this project is a part of the Karachi Biennale Trust Global Outreach Program. In this program, we reach out to young people and through workshops, trainings, and we've recently, since 2019, started focusing on well-being because we've realized this has become a need for creatives, especially because there is a lack of infrastructural support, especially here. So we feel that this is an important aspect to the global outreach program. So what we wanted to do before we start our general discussion is I've asked Channan to read a poem written by a young creative who's no longer with us, Arsalan Malik. And I hope that this poem gives a general vibe of the thoughts behind the frustration that's happening in the young generation. I'm talking about like 18 to 25-year-olds who are just about having graduated and now they have to take that step, into a career or. So, Channan, would you
Yeah, definitely.
read out the poem for us?
For sure. So, wish I was 19, but that's just a pipe dream. Back then there was more hype for me. people happy to see me, no one hurt because of me. Dark thoughts, they enter my mind. Alright, it ain't no surprise. Been here about 1,000 times, and I have been here 1,000 times. Falling off my back, falling off a stair. Always on my back everywhere I go. I just don't know how to act. Everywhere I go, I'm alone. I am alone. You were never there, I was always here. Driving off a bar, I don't feel no fear. It's a great one.
Thank you, Channan. So, yeah, I mean, taking off on Arslan's words,
Yeah.
I want to hear from you as a creative, you know. I want to hear what are the things that are on your mind these days,
Mhm.
you know, what are the frustrations?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of them. Yeah, I think that a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about are issues for creatives globally, universally. And then there's things that are more maybe specific to location, specific to the structure of a country you find yourself in. But I'd say the first thing that sort of comes to mind is how much of a struggle it was for me to realize that, okay, I am a creative person and this is something that I need to embrace and accept and sort of run with. Because, well, I was growing up, and this is sort of like a little bit of an origin story, I guess, of my creativity in a sense. But growing up and through, you know, we over here in Pakistan, we do our O levels and A levels. And through that time, I don't know, nothing really appealed to me so much. And I didn't know, like, okay, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a business person, and it sort of became a thing where my peers a lot of them did have kind of a thing where they're like, okay, we're going to do this. Whether that's because that's a family profession or something. And I was then like choosing, you know, you're at the end of high school, you have to choose, okay, what am I going to be studying for the next 4 years and where do I want life to go? And for me, it was kind of like this weird thing where I had no idea. And so it was not even that I was gravitated towards anything, but I'm like, okay, what seems the least bad? Like, what do I think I can tolerate the most? And so I kind of was toying with the idea of becoming a lawyer at the time because I liked public speaking in a sense. I loved to argue with people. And so that seemed like a viable career choice. It seemed like, you know, I could do the whole thing. Part of it was also just this TV show Hollywood glamour of like having slick back hair and a suit and a briefcase, you know,
And money.
And money, exactly, exactly, right? So these are all the things I mentioned as well. They're all like, they all relate. They're all good professions to make a living, all high-paying salaries, you know, if you manage to go through with them. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go to law school. And then what happened was I applied to some places. I didn't get in where I wanted to exactly. So then I got into one university, which was NYU, and it wasn't for law school, but it was for like a liberal arts degree, kind of. And I think somewhere in my subconscious, it was like, okay, this is a good way of delaying becoming a lawyer and just give myself more time to maybe find out what it was. And it turns out that was the right thing to do, because if I'd gone to law school, I mean, I would have been so close to the finish line that it would have been like, let me really just do this. But I didn't. I had this liberal arts degree, and my first roommate, actually, when I got to college, we sort of connected immediately, and he showed me this software actually that you could make music on just from your bedroom, you know, and you can really like top like Billboard productions are happening just on laptops now, you know, and so it's really all there at your fingertips. And prior to this, I had been realizing that I loved music, but it was very much as an observer, loving it. And when it became something that, oh, you can actually do this, it was like, wow, it was a magical moment for me, and it was a moment of realization. It was like, okay, if I can do this, then I want to try my best to just make this happen, and I don't want to have to settle for something else or have like a plan B. so that was kind of where it started, and as I did it, I just fell more and more in love with it, and I was feeling so fulfilled by it. I decided to go through with the rest of the degree, of course, and that was kind of, this thing like, okay, but what if you don't make it in the music world? It's good to have a degree, make you employable, kind of, and that's where politics came from. I was interested in the field, but it was more so just something that was broad, general, expanding your worldview, and so it was so late, my realization that I had been creative. Had I realized maybe earlier, I would have gotten such a head start. But I think this is one of the problems here in Pakistan, is that it's not considered like a serious career choice, your creativity, from very early on, unless you're a prodigy is the word. Unless you're a prodigy and people cannot deny the fact that, okay, you play guitar so well and you can't do anything else. Unless you're one of those people, it's kind of difficult. Like, people are like, okay, but you haven't really done anything creative, so what do you have to show for it? But I think a lot of would-be creatives, that is the case, where you need something around you, an environment that's going to help you realize it yourself. And so I think that in our society here, kind of, it's a lot of emphasis on, okay, you like doing music, and even if you play sometimes, what are you actually gonna do for a living? And I think part of that comes down to structural issues. Because it's not taken seriously, there's not a lot of money in it, you can't really make a living off, unless you're like the biggest Pakistani superstar for...
And there is a lack of music schools in general for professional development.
Yeah.
I mean, you can learn guitar, you can learn as a beginner, but when you want to go into production or take it on as a career, there's really not any school here.
Definitely, yeah. There's like, maybe even if you just want to play music, or for general creative arts, there's like a couple of schools. It's really just not enough. And everywhere else, you just kind of have, like I said, it's people who do like music, and maybe on the weekends they're doing music, but they're in a way forced to kind of give up on the thing, because it's not seen as lucrative, it's not even seen as serious, or actually its power isn't even recognized, like, besides financial power. It's power as a spiritual tool, as something that can be very fulfilling and give meaning to someone's life. That is dismissed, I feel like.
Also, I think one thing that we get here is families don't generally support young people who want to go into the arts, whether it's theater, music, arts. What is the
I think
reason?
I think so, and I'd like to say that I do actually come from both my parents are creatives, and it was never discouraged, but it still took me really long to realize it, and I'm still struggling with how do I make this work, even with my parents' support. And like you said, most people, I think maybe it is everywhere, over here especially, just because there's such few artists who you can look to and be like, okay, they did it, so maybe I can do it. And in people's families, they don't have anyone who they can look to say they did this and they're doing it seriously, and so it's just a bit nonsensical in a lot of the people's minds, I think, the notion that you can make a career of it. And I do think that, even with barriers, there is always, if you really, really try for something, then at the very least you're going to be fulfilled at the end of the day. And maybe you're not going to be like on stadiums, like performing for the whole world, but like you still know that you did what you loved and you gave it your all. And I think that is kind of the point, really. And I do think that the families they come from their own experiences. Like, I liked music when I was younger, but I still went to work and I still did that, and so that's what you should be doing. And it might be different for that child. Maybe they're just not as much like their parents as the parents think or something. And really, it's like not everything is for everyone, and that's kind of realizing it is so important. It can be difficult, but it's so important to realize what you actually love in life, past the idea of financial security, then maybe ideally you can find a way to make the two things reconcile,
And also, what about, like, suppose if one did decide to, let's say, produce a piece of music, I think the production here is geared towards a more commercial, result. I know that there's an underground music scene here, but it's difficult to be in that scene, and then you have to be discovered by someone.
Really, like
right?
where you have no overground, really. You have like over here, there's like Coke Studio, like you guys should like look that up. It's a cool initiative, creative music wise, that happens from Pakistan as well. But that's sort of the like overground, and now it is picking up over the last few years. There has been more support. We just got Spotify in Pakistan, so it's happening. But just exactly like where there's not much going on above surface level, how are you going to have a strong underground that's varied, and me and a lot of other kids are also in this unique position where we are privileged in this society, and we are maybe more inclined towards Western things because that's what we grew up. It's not that there's no appreciation for our like culture and our music, but the things that you grew up listening to, your parents grew up listening to, you're naturally going to gravitate towards those, and we study in British schools and it's all of that, so we can't help but we can't change who we are or pretend to be someone else, and so of course it comes from a place of privilege, but it's like that often where you find the most problems, because it's people with, even like me myself, I've had like lots of just identity crises in a way where it's like, okay, I'm too east for the west and I'm too west for the east, so like, now what do I do? But all you can really do is be yourself and hope that someone will see that, right? And so I do think it's just a kind of, when families are able to see more people doing it and more people are deciding to go against the grain and actually following their dreams, I think naturally then you will have a kind of domino effect in that regard.
I also think that parents often discourage their kids at an earlier age, especially when it's like grade 9, 10, because they're like, oh no, now you have to go for tuitions, you can't go for music lessons, but what we don't realize is that we have two parts of our brain, we have the left side and the right side. If we're just going to develop one side, which is the rational side, and the other one, which is the creative side, is being stifled, it affects the human being later on in life as well, in their careers. Because I have heard so many times from in people who interview young people, that the resume is perfect, but this person is not what I want, because they will not be able to work out of the box.
Right.
And in Pakistan, we need to be, I think anywhere, in any career, you need to think out of the box, you need to have innovation. Definitely. And that doesn't come if you are not allowing that creative part of your brain 100%, to work. 100%. Right? So I think parents sometimes forget that. Because they're so worried about that A.
Yeah. And I think that oftentimes it's not even the parent who's setting out to be wicked, it's probably how their parents before them sort of told them that this is the way, and they stressed upon certain things and not upon certain things. But just generally for a holistic development, which is very important, you should be able to like be disciplined and sort of have task-based things. But the concept of being able to create something out of nothing is firstly very human, I think, and in all fields, whether it's, I don't know, carpentry, anything. It's all like developing that sort of out of the box thinking that does then carry to anything you do, kind of.
I think another worry that parents have is because creative arts, even art, music, poetry, when you're expressing yourself, sometimes there's a lot of rage, sometimes there's a lot of stuff being put out there which might be not something that society approves of. And then there's this fear of either backlash or immorality that I feel makes some people push the younger generation and say that no, music is all about bad stuff.
Right, that's very true. And this is one thing sort of that used to happen with like hip hop a lot and still does, where it's like, oh, like, why are they always talking about drugs and guns and violence? It's like these people are living that, and they're living that not because they want to be, but how can you, it's so important to be able to express yourself freely and say things, because at the end of the day, your song isn't going to hurt someone physically, but it may prevent you from saying it out, speaking it out, putting it on paper, letting your darkest thought out at least it gets it out and you make something with it. So it shows you that, okay, these thoughts that I have, they're not just there to eat away at me, but I can actually create with them, you know. And yeah, like you said, I think they fear like, oh, music is like rowdy and stuff, but these are all like human emotions that it's just letting human experience and convey. And I think that art is, you know, most people, they don't go through their lives not caring much about poetry maybe or painting or whatever, and then maybe something happens, maybe you lose a loved one, maybe you break up with your significant other, maybe, you know, and then you're looking to make like sense of the world. And in those moments, art is really sustenance. It's not like a luxury or just a privilege. It's what helps us like relate to whatever is going on. You know, you read someone's piece and it's like, oh man, someone has been through this before, you know, and it's really just helps. It's like a survival tool at that point. And I think that that is kind of forgotten. And maybe because it hasn't been given that role hasn't been allowed in people's homes for it. But I think that that is a very powerful thing that people don't even know that maybe could, you know, do something for them really and help them. Just understand the world, I think, is like.
So Channan, I want you to kind of just
Yeah.
list like
Yeah.
3 main things that you would hope
Mhm.
to see,
Okay.
or that you feel really urgently need to be
Yeah.
addressed
Yeah.
at this point as
Yeah.
a young creative here.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what comes to mind. I think number one is just more of it happening, whether that's more spaces where it can happen, you know, or if it's more industry support. You know, there is a music industry and there are record labels. Maybe they should take a look at what the scene is and the corners of it. You know, that's usually where you find stuff that's the most interesting. And then I think, like you said, education, musical education, having that be an option. And then sort of, you know, you mentioned the Biennale, and I think things like that are so important to be happening more and more of. And definitely I've seen them since I've been here, have been increasing in frequency, but still I think just the more the better, you know, kind of, you do have to like flood the society with art, and then some of it will dissipate, but you flooded it, so there will be remnants, and it does touch people, you know. I think that people, it's kind of like the domino effect thing I was talking about, where you see people doing it and then it becomes normalized in a way. It's not stigma anymore being an artist by profession. It's normal. It's something that you do because you love it. And then yeah, I think that's basically it.
I mean, COVID has also been very hard on
Definitely,
artists,
yeah.
very, very hard, because
Yeah.
those spaces that had come up, and you know, I think for these kind of experiences, you need to share with people,
Yeah.
right? It's important to gather physically.
Yeah.
Zoom has been very difficult
Yeah.
for performers, for actors, for music.
Yeah.
COVID has been a tough call on everyone.
Definitely.
You know?
And I guess my generation in particular, I mean, of course, everyone, like, it's bad if you were just going to freshman year, but sort of, you know, I graduated May 2020. March, sort of, it got bad that same year. And so then I was like, okay, but I was supposed to be applying for jobs and stuff right now. So, like, what about that, kind of? And yeah, it definitely, I think, you know, people, a lot of artists around the world really just made money maybe because they were playing at a bar or whatever every night. And so having that taken away, you know, and this has been a problem in all parts of the world, I think, just not been giving funding to survive. And, you know, I heard in the UK there was just one sort of member of parliament who was like, okay, like, artists should just find something else to do, you know. And it's like, no, you find something else. You know, it's just one of those weird things where it's just seen as like so throwaway, but it's actually maybe in my opinion, it is our best tool, art, of understanding the world that's so abstract, to make some sort of sense of it. It just feels like such a necessary thing, you know, very essential.
Yeah, on that note, Channan, I'd like to invite you to perform this piece that you have worked on. Could you talk a little bit about it first?
Yeah. So it's just kind of an acoustic guitar song. I've just recently, over the past year, was actually, COVID's been good in some ways, and that been home, kind of forced to like play instruments more. And I'm quite like novice with the acoustic guitar, but it's something that I think it's about it's about love, and it's about being there for someone through everything, and sort of, I suppose that, you know, there's always like light on the other side as well, no matter how dark things get. And yeah, it's called Hide, and yeah, I'll perform that now. I take all your pain from you, even though you never asked me to. Walking in the rain with you, wondering what this could be if we could just see it through. Will you stick around hand in hand through all the fighting? I still see your face and I like it. Come down here so far from sight and hide away with me. Take your time, you know I'm not going anywhere. Save what I have left to shelter you. And don't you ever change for me. I think you're perfect just the way you are. I'll keep a place for you to rest your head when it's cold outside. All through the night, stay by my side. And rain keeps on pouring, I'll try to keep you covered. Stay here, you're safe with me. Clouds hide the sunlight, I'll keep you far from shadows. Stay here, you're safe with me. And rain keeps on pouring, I'll try to keep you covered. Stay here, you're safe with me. You'll never need another. Got the sunlight, I'll keep you far from shadows. Stay here, you're safe. So will you stick around hand in hand through all the fighting? I still see your face and I like it. Come down here so far from sight and hide away with me. Just take your time, you know I'm not going anywhere. I'll save what I have left to shelter you. Said I save what I have left to shelter you.
That was beautiful. Channan, thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
It was really good.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours, but when you play that one piece, it just says it says it all.
Yeah,
you know?
I'd hope so. I'd hope so, definitely. It's I don't know. It's an interesting one because it. Don't want to explain too much, of course, but I just think that it's important for us to be there for each other, because solitude, it's difficult, and even if you feel like you're fine being alone, you know, maybe it's just that the right person hasn't been there for you or something. So I just think it's something to keep in mind for everyone, to just be there for the people who you love.
Yeah, and and on that note, I would like to move on about how can we all as a community, as a government, as a society be there for each other.
Yeah.
The different needs that people have, especially creative ones, right? So what I had a few thoughts, and I mean you can also we had a discussion regarding, you know, our government needs to support creativity more. We don't teach art in government schools after grade 3. Okay, we don't have any scholarships or funding for young people like you who might want to take some time off and create more music like that,
Yeah.
on their own.
Yeah.
We don't have any competitions, we don't have any music theory schools.
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
it was very surprising to note that even in music schools, there's hardly any music theory taught,
Right.
And we have this amazing history of 8,000 years of a civilization in the subcontinent where there used to be music and dance and arts. I mean,
Celebrated.
it was celebrated.
Part of everyday kind
Yeah.
of, yeah.
I mean, and even though the layers of society have changed or they've changed the narrative, but if we really look deep down
Mhm.
inside, all of us, we've got it. We've got it. It's part of us, and if we stifle it, um, it's going to create an antithesis, right? So how about we celebrate it? You know,
Definitely.
I mean, it's there when you see Qawwali,
Yeah.
when you see
Yeah.
Milad,
Yeah.
rhythm,
Yeah.
music, weddings,
Right.
But we're always trying to borrow from the other because our own we're like always in this limbo. Can we create or,
Yeah. Yeah, like is someone going to think I'm foolish for creating? It's kind of all these, and yeah, something that I guess relates to it is that as a creative or a would-be creative, you want as few barriers, whether they're mental or they're real, to be able to pick up a guitar, pick up something and just make something. You don't want to have to think about 100 different things, that really can prevent even the smallest idea of maybe like people aren't going to take me seriously because I'm doing music, and like you said, sort of, I think reclaiming that identity of celebrating it it's part of this, I think, this important like narrative shift that kind of needs to take place. Like one thing came to mind sort of from my experience where I was, I had selected to take art in my O levels, and in my whole year, I don't know, about like there's hundreds of people in the year, I was the only boy who was taking art as an O level. Like it's a little bit ridiculous when you think about it, right? Like how there must be other boys who are interested in it, but why aren't they pursuing that, And so yeah, I think that the government's role is sort of like you said, like, grant that idea in the context of our society seems so out there, right? But it's really not. It's like, how will you have people realizing that they're great at something if they're not being given the chance to even try,
I mean, we have a Ministry of Culture,
Mm-hmm.
but what we need to realize is that what does culture include now?
Mm.
It's not just folk stuff.
That's very
It's
true.
contemporary stuff.
Yeah.
And what is contemporary music right now? It's a fusion. A lot of times, it's actually become a fusion of Eastern and Western
Definitely.
instruments, styles. I think Pakistan has shown through Coke Studio performances that people all over the world are enthralled by those performances. Why? Because it's a good fusion of East and West.
Definitely.
So the whole idea about cultures is changing, and our government needs to step up with that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's an interesting point actually. I never really thought about that, but it's true. Like, I definitely appreciate the Eastern classics, and I love like Nusrat and stuff, but I really do connect more to a certain style of singing. Maybe it's certain word choices. Maybe it's less about man's relationship with God, and maybe it's more a more human thing that maybe appeals to the younger generation. And that, like you said, Coke Studio is kind of fusing those two things together, and it's loved all over the world. So more initiatives like that, I suppose, to acknowledge this shift in culture. Like young people, majority of them don't want to be listening to folk music, and even if they admire the message behind it, they're probably listening to something else in their free time, on the way to work, whatever it is. So I think, it's all part of this sort of recognizing art as something that's real and really important, and that we can't thrive without. And even if one individual can, they need to be thinking about the individuals who do need it. The same way they need food or water, maybe an individual needs to create and needs to engage with art, These tools can be mechanisms for survival, really, and can help us find our place in the world, It's a big theme just generally across the world these days. It's very like, people are like, what is the point of everything? Everyone's very alienated. They're like, what is going on? depression, suicide, it's all on the rise. And so we have to ask ourselves, like, why is that? It seems to me that it's because we are continuously at every step rejecting what the things we actually love in favor of whatever it is. And of course, like I said, I have the privilege of being able to pursue things without having to worry about starving. Maybe that's not the case for everyone, but I see it too often in other people who have the privilege. They're just kind of going along with it. Like, where is that childlike enthusiasm of loving something so much that you don't care how realistic it is? I think that is something that's been lost. And part of the shifting narrative, I think, is recognizing that and saying to people that, you can do this. Because then once you tell one person that, maybe one person is very brave and does something, that's really going to inspire people who were maybe not that brave, but seeing that now showed them. So I think, it's definitely government,
We need more documentaries about musicians from
Definitely.
our part of the world who've made it, who've gone through their struggles.
Yeah.
We need more writing,
Right.
so people can find out. Another thing I've found works really well is this cross culture, cross country collaboration, especially even like this program that we're having right now, because there are things that we have to share, there are things that other places have to share, and when we start collaborating, we all share this knowledge and we are able to gain from each other.
Definitely.
And I find that is bringing about a very interesting energy which young people all over the world from different parts can work with, and they can get from each other. On that note, I would like to thank Andrew Patterson as well, because I think this podcast is going to be aired on June 8th as part of Pixelache radio program. So I'd like to thank Andrew for that, and thank you very much, Channan, for sharing this.
Of course, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I think it's just really important things to think about, and so it's my pleasure.
I hope we can take this conversation further and we can do something about it. We've talked about it. Now let's be able to make some shifts, so that our generation, your generation, can benefit from it.
We would love to. Definitely. Thank you.
And I think it's a good rapport to have with an older professional like myself, because we are in a position where we can make those decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
So we need to know your issues.
Definitely. Yeah, we can't sort of just be angry young people just like screaming without, it's healthy once in a while, but it doesn't really help the people who are in power understand, So,
I personally believe there are different ways of protesting. You can go out onto the street with placards. Yes, that's one way. But there are other ways. You can protest with your music, with your writing, but always give some solutions as well.
Definitely.
We as a country like to rage.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I think, definitely kind of without aimlessly at times. But
So I think it's been great speaking to you, and I hope that we can continue this discussion further at some point. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening and taking part in this. We would like to end with another piece of music. It's a more uplifting, different kind of sound, different vibe. So hopefully you'll enjoy it as we end this program. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.